Hey, what's going on everybody? Mike here, and Dark Souls 3 is about to be released here in the next 24 hours, at least the Japanese released, everywhere else about 2 weeks from now. So I thought I'd go ahead and make this video analyzing the starting classes, the burial gifts, all the stats, etc., as well as give you my personal choices on what I'll be starting with on my first playthrough, as well as give some recommendations for somebody who's never ever played a Souls game, a starting class that I think they'll benefit the most from. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and jump right into it. Alright, before we jump into the starting classes, let's go ahead and break down the stats and the attributes so you guys know which characters have what when I break those down. We have a grand total of 9 attributes for Dark Souls 3. They are as follows. We have Vigor, Attunement, Endurance, Vitality, Strength, Dexterity, Intelligence, Faith, and Luck. Starting right from the top, we got Vigor, which governs your total HP, which obviously your HP is how much damage you can take before you die. Another thing that it does is it increases your resistance to frost. Now, frost is something new to Dark Souls 3, in fact, the Souls series in general. If you come up with something in the wild that causes frost damage, such as a weapon or a monster, a spell, something like that, a meter on your screen will begin to fill up that's blue. Now, as that meter fills up, your character will begin to slow, you'll move a lot slower, you'll attack a lot slower, as if you're being frozen alive, which you very well are. If that meter fills all the way up, you will be considered frostbitten, your character will be frozen solid, and you'll die and appear back at your last bonfire. Now, once you pop out of the bonfire, you'll be good as normal, you'll be able to go back to what you were doing. Alright, next up we got Attunement, which governs your total focus points, or your focus power, whatever you want to call it, which is essentially your blue meter below your health bar, which allows you to cast miracles, spells, so on and so forth, as well as something new to the Soul series called Sword Arts, which is sort of special type of techniques that your weapons and your shields can do, sort of like an extra thing that you can do in combat towards your enemies. And the last thing that Attunement does, it is also determines the total number of attunement slots that you have through your character. So it's very important to sorcerers, clerics, pyromancers, things like that. And attunement slots, you need those to equip your spells, miracles, so on and so forth. Next up we have Endurance, which governs your entire stamina bar, which is the green bar, which determines how many times you can attack an enemy with a weapon, how much damage your shield can take before it breaks your guard. Endurance also governs the resistance to lightning damage and bleeding damage. So next up is Vitality, which governs your maximum equip load. The higher your equip load is, the heavier armors, the heavier weapons you can use without doing the fat roll. Vitality also governs your physical defense, while all the other stats on here also do that as well, but Vitality seems to do it the most, I guess. And it also increases your resistance to poison. Next up, speaking of which, we have Strength. Strength, the higher your strength is, the more heavier weapons, the more powerful weapons you'll be able to use. It also improves the stat strength of weapons that are strength-based scaling, and it also increases your resistance to fire. Alright, next we have Dexterity. Much like Strength, any weapon that is scaled with Dexterity will obviously increase the damage of that weapon. And much like Dark Souls 1, it also increases your spellcasting time. So if you are a spellcaster, whether it be a cleric or a sorcerer. And oddly enough, it also reduces your damage while you're falling, which is oddly enough because that's never been in any Souls game that I can remember. Alright, next up we have Intelligence, which increases the power of both sorceries and pyromancies. It also increases your resistance or your defense for magic. Next up is Faith. Just like Intelligence, it increases your potency towards miracles and pyromancy. So that's important to note that pyromancy is actually affected by both miracles and intelligence. It's probably implying that it's faith, or not faith, but hexes are probably going to make a comeback. And it also increases your defense towards dark type attacks and magic and things like that. And lastly, the returning stat from Demon Souls, we have Luck. Now, Luck in Demon Souls only governed your item discovery. The more luck you had, the more often people would drop items and things like that. However, this time around, it also increases your resistance to curses, as well as ups your bleeding and poison capability. Now, what that means is that if you come across something in the wild and you're trying to use something such as an Uchi Katana that causes bleeding damage, if you have the higher luck, that bleeding meter will actually fill up faster. Same thing with the poison. If you have something like a toxic cloud or something like that, the poison meter will fill up a lot faster if you have more luck. So that'll probably be very interesting as the game plays out. Alright, so let's go ahead and jump right into the starting classes. First up, we have the Knight, which the Knight obviously starts off with all the Knight's armor. It starts off with a Knight's shield and a long sword. It has, of all the other starting classes, the highest vitality, and it also has the second highest strength stat of all the other starting classes. Other than that, it's very well rounded, starts out at level 9. Next up, we have the Mercenary, which starts off with the Cell Sword armor, all of it, the Wooden Shield, and the Cell Sword Twin Blades. Now, what's interesting about the Twin Blades is that it can actually be pulled apart into 2 weapons, sort of like Bloodborne in a way. Both swords appear in the icon. Now, I'm not sure what causes that, whether it be the sword art or you're dual wielding it, whatever it is, but you can pull them apart. I have seen that in gameplay. It also has the highest dexterity stat of all other classes. It starts off at level 8. Next up, we have the warrior, which is probably going to be the class that I start with, which I'll get to later on in the video. It has, of all the other classes, the highest vigor, the highest endurance, and the highest strength of all other starting classes. It starts off with the northern armor set with the helm, armor, gloves, and trousers. It starts out with the round shield and the battle axe. So if you're looking to start off with an easy strength build, this will probably be your way to go. Next up, we have a new class called the Herald. Starts out at level 9, and it's a very well-rounded class. It starts out with the Herald armor with the helm, armor, gloves, and trousers, a talisman, a kite shield, and a spear weapon. It also starts out with a miracle called Heal Aid. Very interesting class. Next up, other than the Deprived, the Thief is actually the lowest level character, starting out at level 5, and it is the only class that starts with a bow, a short bow, and 30 wood arrows. It starts with a Thief mask, deserter armor, and deserter trousers, as well as an iron round shield and a bandit knife. Now, once again, it's the only class that starts with a bow, so if you want to be a dex build and you want to start with the bow right away, instead of going with mercenary, you might want to consider going with a thief. Next up, dexterity once again gets a lot more love. It gets the assassin class. Once again, it has the second highest dexterity stat of all the other starting classes. It starts out at level 10. It starts with the assassin's trousers, or the assassin's armor set with the hood, armor, and trousers. It starts out with a target shield, an S dot, and it also starts with a sorcerer's staff and the spell Spook. Now, what Spook does is it quiets your footsteps and also helps with fall damage. So that's a very interesting class to start with. I've never really seen anything like that. Plus, it starts with a sorcery called Spook, so that's pretty cool. Next up, we have the sorcerer class, and the sorcerer class this time around is given some much needed love. First off, his armor set, which is the sorcerer armor set, is a throwback completely to the Demon Souls game of Sage Freak. I'll throw a screenshot up there so you guys can see it. But the only difference is that it's white this time around and not black. But the hood / cowl that's coming over the sorcerer's head is a dead giveaway. It has the highest intelligence stat, that's a given, of any other starting class. It starts with a Maulbreaker, a leather shield, sorcerer's staff, the sorcerer's armor, 2 spells this time around, Soul Arrow and Heavy Soul Arrow, and it also, if that wasn't enough, starts off with the Young Dragon Ring. So this time around, if you're looking to be a spellcaster right off rip and not really have that much hard of a time, this will probably be the easiest starting class for a sorcerer of any other Souls game. Next up, we have the Pyromancer, which starts out at level 8. It is the only class that actually has high intelligence and faith both at the same time. It starts out with the Pyromancy complete set with the flame, the crown, the garb, the wrap, the trousers, the fireball spell, the Caduceus round shield, a hand axe, and it also starts with an own ring of its own called the Great Swamp Ring, which increases the potency of pyromancies. Which I'm very intrigued by that ring just by itself, because the Great Swamp, if you know anything about the lore, is that Salaman the Great, who's a character from Dark Souls 1, or at least in lore sense, or who was the pupil of one of the witches of Izalith from Dark Souls 1 lore. So I'm very interested to see the origins of that ring, if there's anything at all. Next up, we have the Cleric. Now, the Cleric, oddly enough, its fabric on it looks very cool. But anyway, it starts out at level 7. Has the highest faith stat of any other starting class. It starts out with a mace, the Cleric Sacred Chime, the Cleric Blue Robe, Cleric Gloves, Cleric Trousers, the Heal Miracle, and the Force Miracle. Now, once again, the Heal Miracle just heals your character. The more focus points you have, the more often you can heal your character. And Force, I'm not sure if it's any different this time around, but normally all that does is give you some knockback damage. Or not damage, but just some knockback if any enemies are coming towards you, or if they're towards a cliff, you can knock them off with it. It remains to be seen if it does any damage this time around, but more than likely it just knocks people on their ass. And lastly, we have the ballsy of the ballsy classes. We have the Deprived. Starts out at level 1 and all stats are at level 10. Starts off with a lion cloth around its waist, a plague shield, and a club. This is for the die-hard fans, people who want the absolute most challenge, or people that just basically want a class that starts off with very even stats, with even stats in general. This is also actually the easiest one to level. Since you start out at level 1, you'll be able to pop in whatever stats you want. Alright, aside from your starting class, you'll also be given the opportunity to pick a burial gift. There are 9 total. Now, once again, you can choose none at all. Just start purely with your starting class, but they are as followed. We have the Life Ring, the Divine Blessing, the Hidden Blessing, the Black Firebomb, the Fire Gem, the Sovereignless Soul, the Rusted Gold Coin, the Cracked Red Eye Orb, or the Young White Branch. Now, the Life Ring increases your maximum HP by a small amount. The Divine Blessing fully restores your HP and cures any ailments. It's a one-time use. The Hidden Blessing fully restores your focus points, and that's a one-time use as well. Your Black Firebombs, it doesn't say how many you get. I assume it's either 3 or 5, maybe just 1. but it's just basically just a bomb that you throw at an enemy. The fire gem is a material used to upgrade your fire weapons, so that's interesting. It seems they brought back the upgrade path from Dark Souls 2. Rather than actually go up an upgrade path, you actually just enchant weapons with special types of special damage, such as fire, lightning, shit like that. The Sovereignless Soul, which only gives you 2,000 soul, but that probably will be enough to give you like a level or two. So if you want that early game, go ahead and pop that up. Once again, it only gives you 2,000 souls though, so just keep that in mind. Next up is the Rusted Gold Coin. The Rusted Gold Coin will boost your item discovery for a short while, so if there's something that's like being real stubborn with an item drop and you know that item or that character or that boss and that something drops that item, you might want to get this, give you a better opportunity to get those either that armor or that really special weapon that you want to use. The Cracked Red Eye Orb will allow you to invade other players, however it's only a one-time use, so it's like kind of a waste of a starting gift, but it's your choice. And lastly, once again, we have the Young White Branch. It allows you to blend in with your environment. I don't know why you would want that, but if you want to, go ahead and White Branch it up, I guess. Out of all the starting gifts, I would probably recommend the Fire Gem, the Sovereignless Soul, or the Rusted Gold Coin for obvious reasons. The Fire Gem, there was a weapon early on in Dark Souls 2 that you could find next to a flaming salamander that had fire enchantment on it, and it was actually a very powerful weapon early game, so that could be very well same thing here. However, I'm not sure how the blacksmithing works in this game, whether you find a blacksmith and he enchants it for you, or if you can enchant it yourself. That remains to be seen. The Sovereignless Soul, once again, it gives you 2,000 souls, and it'll allow you to probably get like a level or two early game. And the Rusted Gold Coin, once again, increases your item discovery. Alright, for the last part of this video, I'm going to give you guys the 3 starting classes that I myself am debating in my head on which one I want to start with for my first playthrough, which I'll be putting up here on YouTube, as well as give you my recommendation on which, if you've never ever played a Souls game, which starting class I think you would benefit the most from, and which one I think you should start with. Alright, out of my 3 starting classes, the first one up, the main contender, is probably the Warrior. And the main reason that is because it starts off with the highest vigor, the highest endurance, and the highest strength. Whenever I start off with a Souls game, it's always a strength-based character. It's not always like maxed out at 50 or 100 or nothing like that. It's usually always a strength-based weapon, usually the large club. I don't know, I just love that weapon. Also, I really do like the look of the Warrior. He's pretty cool looking. And his stats are pretty well rounded. It also has a very high luck stat to begin with, so that's pretty cool as well. The second contender is probably the Knight. The Knight stat, the Vitality, I do like, along with strength-based weapons. I also usually like to wear very heavy armor as well. You also need high vitality in order to hold really heavy weapons, because usually that damn large club or the Zweihander are very heavy. So unless you want to do the fat roll the whole game, your vitality needs to be up there as well. Also, usually on my first playthrough, I like to dabble a little bit into miracles and magic, not so much as the casting part, but more as in the buff weapons, such as Sunlight Blade, Crystal Magic Weapon, Great Magic Weapon, things like that nature. And as you can see, Knight starts out with Intelligence at 9 and Faith at 9, so you can sort of dabble in that from the very beginning, because they're both off at even stats. And the third class that I'm sort of debating in my head is the Pyromancer, sort of for cosmetic and nostalgic reasons. In Dark Souls 1, the very first class that I picked was actually the Pyromancer, and that got me through the entire game, so that was pretty cool. I also liked the look of the Pyromancer class this time around. It has this weird tribal Native American type look, man. It's very strange. Also, I'm intrigued by the great swamp ring that it starts off with, that increases your pyromancy. If you remember from Dark Souls 1, there was an NPC that taught you pyromancy that came from the Great Swamp that we never got to see, so I'm intrigued to see if we go there this time around. Now on to my recommendation for people that have never ever played a Souls game, or have, and want to hop back into it now. Out of all other classes, the one that I've narrowed it down to that would benefit you, that I believe would benefit you the most, is the Herald, and I'll explain why. Number 1, the Herald is very well rounded in stats. The only low stat that it has is intelligence, but it isn't really that low. And other than the Knight, the Herald's armor is actually the second best defensive-wise. Another thing that's interesting about the Herald is that every class starts off with 3 Estus flasks. However, the Herald also starts out with a miracle called Heal Aid, so that means you'll have further options in battle to heal your character. And last, but most certainly not least, is that you start off with the Spear. Now, the Spear is a special type of weapon. It allows you to hit your enemies from behind a shield, so that means if they attack you while you're attacking them, they'll hit the shield and won't do you any damage. Now, of course, you have to remember that you have to lower your shield and regain your stamina, but the point still remains. The shield is a great poke, dodge, and move type of weapon. Now, if you don't like the Spear, that's fine. Within every Souls game, usually within the first hour, you're going to have about 5 to 6, 7 different weapons in your inventory just by finding them right off the road. But if you like the Spear, then go ahead and keep it. But honestly, once again, that was a class recommended for the people that are just starting the game, or have never played a Souls game in general, and want to have like the easiest time, or at least not have the most disheartening time when they first start the game. I believe it'll allow you to get past the tutorial boss and determine what type of character you want to craft and build. Alright, so anyway, that's it. I hope you guys enjoyed my video about the breakdown of the starting starting classes, the stats, my recommendations, all that good stuff. Once again, the Japanese release for Dark Souls 3 is less than 24 hours now. As for anybody like myself that is waiting for the English version, it comes out a little over 2 weeks from now, which kind of sucks, but it is what it is. I myself will not be watching anybody's Japanese playthrough, at least not until I play the game myself. I know it is what it is, but I want to go into the game completely blind as possible. The only thing I know right now is the starting classes and the tutorial boss. That's about it. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed my video. Till next time, peace.